Welcome to today's show. For all of you watching on YouTube, please take a moment, hit that subscribe button, and click that bell for notifications.
On today's episode, we have a very special guest. She is the creator of Styles by WTB, an activist against domestic violence, a writer, producer, actress, and she happens to be the niece of the legendary Billie Holiday. Andrea Ward.
You look so much like your aunt. You really, really do. And I'm so glad that we met. I mean, that's the one of the most positive things about social media is I have met so many people that, interviewed people that I've been blessed enough to talk to that I would have never have been able to get to through all the red tape. And so, and I'm so glad that we connected that way as well. But um, the movie, The People versus Billie Holiday, I'm sure you've seen it by now. And so I want to make it clear to the people that are watching and listening. This was not a movie the family made. This was a movie Lee Daniels made. And how did you learn that they were even doing another movie on your famous aunt?
Um, that's a really good question. So it all started when I introduced myself to Mr. Daniels. And
Oh,
after I introduced myself, there was like a big public announcement 3 months later that he was doing a film. And I thought to myself, that was strange because I literally just introduced myself 3 months ago and told him who I was. And
uh,
so that's how I discovered it because I was already writing the film. I'd finished it in 2019, but we hadn't started production because of COVID.
did you grow up listening to Billie Holiday music? Did the family have this heritage discussion, of the legacy of the family, or?
Yeah, so I grew up listening to Billie Holiday without actually knowing who she was because this was kept a secret for the elders. The elders wanted to protect my family and the next generation because there was a generation before us that was paying the ultimate price just because of whom we were related to. And that's a whole different story. And a lot of them paid like a very fatal price. So I didn't discover this until 5 years ago when my grandmother's deathbed, and she told me the truth. I just thought she was kind of up in age. I mean, she lived to almost be 100.
Wow.
And when I did the research and I looked up her name and the address she told me to look up, her name was right there. They grew up together along with my grandfather. My grandfather is Billie's biological brother. So she had siblings.
Yes.
And and my grandmom, she also gave me Billie's journal. So she wanted me to continue the family legacy and to keep the family secrets. I literally have a journal from Billie Holiday, George Washington, Madam C.J. Walker, Henry Armstrong. These are all my family members by
Wow.
blood. Yeah.
That had to be just like, wow, mind blowing to learn all of that. And then, Madam CJ Walker, they just had the film with her recently. I think maybe her daughter or one of her great grandchildren wrote a book and they based it off of or something. I'm not sure of. I wasn't prepared for that because I didn't know that part about your story. But that's amazing that your family were able to keep up, and keep the journals and so that just kind of throws me for a loop. So that, I mean, you actually had a source to write your screenplay from, more from like her viewpoint.
Yes, and a lot of her secrets, and also a lot of things that a lot of films got wrong, like Lady Sings the Blues. I like that version better than the one that just came out, just because it wasn't focused predominantly on sexual explicit nudity or her demise, her drug habits and drinking and drugs and drug dealers. Like I don't know where the drug dealers came from. Um, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But you know, um, I got a chance to really know who she was as a person. And she was a really beautiful person. She also made a difference in our communities. Like she even opened up a restaurant for her mom in Baltimore and created jobs for people of color. Because
Wow.
during that time, a person of color would get paid like cents, which was also
Yeah.
little to nothing, and you wouldn't be able to survive off of, especially in Baltimore. Baltimore was very segregated and a lot of racism there. So it was very difficult, especially a person of color, but a woman of color, that
Yeah.
was 10 times worse.
When we were you mentioned the over sexualization of the movie, and I agree with you with that, because it seems like from watching documentaries of Billie Holiday and the people that like really loved her, that talk about her, it was she didn't seem tragic to them. You know, they kind of made her tragic, like, you know, in the film. Um, to them, they saw it as she lived her life on her terms, made some bad choices along the way, but she kind of owned her choices, or whatever, and went long periods without drug use. And you can kind of see that, you know, the up and down in the weight usually is kind of fits the time periods of when they come off and go on to medication, you know, any type of meds or things like that. And but the film kind of, and a lot of with these music bios from that time period and things, when you see this on like the white counterparts, they leave a lot of that out. And jazz was predominantly white, you know, uh, music form, as far as the musicians and singers and things. And that is where the heroine was like, it wasn't just like Billie Holiday did this. This was like the jazz community, period. She would have gotten this probably from some of the white band members she sang with, or what. Does that make sense?
I mean, that's exactly where it came from. You hit
Yeah.
it right on the dot, and I'm glad you said that because the film made it seem like it came from a drug dealer. During that time, there was no such thing as a drug dealer. It's
Right.
either you got a bit or you didn't, you know? So I don't know where that part came from. There's a lot of things that's very questionable, and I'm just like, well, I read the journal, that wasn't in there, or if it was in there, it didn't happen that way.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the film, it's definitely a great area, and I have to give credit when it's due. When it comes to Audrey Day,
Oh,
she did a good job
wonderful.
with the portrayal of her. Some things were questionable, but I have to give credit when it's due. She has a phenomenal voice, and she is a great actress. It's just how she was portrayed was in such a negative way and aspect, because it's, to me, if you, let's just say I wanted to write a film
Yeah.
about a Black man of color and his struggles during that time, it would take for me to interview or to have a conversation with someone of color that is a Black man and that was living during that time and knew what it was like. I'm not going to write something that I have no knowledge of, especially if I can't mentally put myself in those shoes and try to paint a perfect picture. Because if you don't know what you're doing or don't know which way to draw, how are you going to paint a picture? It's not going to be a masterful piece. It's not going to be art. It's not going to be correct when it's done. You
Yeah.
know, and that's just how I see it when it comes to this film. You know, writing or directing a film about a Black woman and her struggles during that time period, you should have a conversation with a woman that was alive during that time and that witnessed everything to at least get a better understanding. And she wasn't that explicit, like with nudity or just getting naked. And like, she wasn't that. She was more private
Yes.
because she channeled her own inner demons and she brought it out through her music as a way of gaining her strength and her power back. Like, she wasn't weak-minded. She wasn't weak. She was quite the fighter, and the way that she was raised was not like normal kids. She didn't have a normal childhood. Heck, any of the women in my family did not have normal childhoods. We were always raised to be tough and strong. Like even me till this very day, like I was raised to be tough and strong. Like he was raised to survive, but not to live.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's still that way till this very day in my family.
It's very interesting when you watch, and I encourage everybody to get on YouTube, watch a lot of these documentaries that are about her. There are elements where they do talk about things in a tragic way, but that's not the way her friends remember her. You know, they kind of tell a different side. And the fact that she really, according to all her friends, really wanted a child, you know, and they said that, not having children really, really hit her hard. I don't know if that's
The
something.
reason, so she had the diagnosis of endometriosis before endometriosis was even a diagnosis or a thing. And during that time, no one was aware of what endometriosis was, but it's very chronic in my family. It's very genetic. Every woman in my family throughout generations has had the same thing. Either you can have children, or like if you, most times you can't have kids, but if you do, it's like slim chance to none. You're lucky to even be able to have children. And once you are able to have children, you have to keep getting surgery time after time. And endometriosis is very painful. It affects your mood swings. It affects your weight. Not only that, thyroids come into place, like thyroid tumors, all sorts of stuff. And during that time, there was no treatment, medication, anything. So that's another reason why her weight would fluctuate up and down, because all the women in my family go through it right now.
The drug issue, I think, is really sad, the way that they kind of exploited that a little bit. I mean, obviously it was a part of her life, so I mean you have to touch on it, but she was so much more than that.
Yeah, it was upsetting for me watching it, and I could just remember every 2 seconds I spent watching it. I'm not gonna lie, I threw out some words out there. I was very upset, because that's not something she would have wanted. She wouldn't have wanted to be remembered by that. She would want to be remembered because of her music, because of the pain she's gone through. She's transforming it into art, into her music. You can hear it through her voice, like the way she sings certain songs, like the way that it was carried out. Like you can tell she went through it, but she also wanted the audience to connect to her. It didn't matter what color you are, what gender. Hurt is hurt, pain is pain. Everybody goes through it, because we're all human at the same time. And I feel like that was sad, because like if my grandmother was alive and my grandmom grew up with her, my grandmom she'd probably say a few things about the film. It wouldn't be polite. Um, but I mean, and as her great niece, like it's also my job and duty to make sure that her legacy continues to live on, and that she's celebrated in the right way, not in a way for Hollywood to make all this money off of someone that's not even here to defend herself or to tell her story. And I think that's the disgusting part. If you're gonna tell a story, make sure you have all the facts right. Don't just do it for the money or the greed. Just do it. If you have a connection with her, do it because of that. Don't just do things because of the money, because, oh, this might be the new hot topic. Like, she wasn't a topic. She was a person at the end of the day. And yes, did she suffer? She suffered a lot. She suffered a great deal. But she didn't let her suffering go to waste. Like, she transformed it into art, which has such a phenomenal impact on music industry, like till this very day. Like people, like her influences still touches hearts and different souls, and and people resonate with that. And she's still the most iconic jazz like musician that we all still love and adore. And a lot of other like major publications agree with me. They hate the film. They
Yeah.
hate it. It was shot beautifully. It was just the way it was directed and written. That's what made it disgraceful.
Yeah, I agree with you, because Audra was wonderful. She did a great job. She deserves every award that she can get. She can only do what's on the page, and evidently she has a great affinity for your aunt. And so that I give all credit to her for that. And it was so beautifully shot that that it's kind of like Mommy Dearest, it is as bad as that film ended up being for a lot of people and the critics and then some people that were friends with Joan Crawford even. It was so beautifully shot that people should see it just for that reason, but know that not everything in here is fact. And that's, he didn't even discuss this with anybody in your family. You told me he didn't make contact with anyone in the family. Is that correct?
That's correct. He knew who I was. He knew I existed. He knew I lived out here in Los Angeles. And we have some of the same mutual friends or people that we know and talk to. So, and I spoke to another person that had their dealings with him and a lot of bad history. And it was the same thing. They were like, well, if he's gonna do it, you might as well do your version, tell your family's true story, keep our legacy alive and positive. Do what you have to do because that's your family and you are a representation of your family.
Yes, I agree. I think that you should not give up on your dream. You should do that film. It's going to be you almost have to reclaim her legacy in a way.
And I totally agree with you. It's
Yeah.
just the way that these stories are being painted about women of color, especially during
Right.
that time era. I think it is so unfair because if you're gonna do that and showcase a person's demise, their struggles, their sex addiction, drug addiction, any type of addiction, you should do that with the male. Like not everyone was perfect, but it doesn't give anyone the right to even take someone's life story and their struggles and exploit that for money or to get ratings or to get investments. Like it's so unfair because like women in general, and honestly in my eyes, like women are like our own superheroes because like we give birth into the world,
Yeah.
carry the weight on our shoulder, and during that time being a black woman during that time you got like 10-20 strikes against you, but they still made things happen within the music industry because they weren't accepted anywhere. They weren't accepted to sing at bars, they weren't accepted to sing out loud. Just you had to have a certain card in order to perform. You had to get permission from the owner who was also like Caucasian, and sometimes they were cool and a lot of times they weren't because it wasn't allowed or it was frowned upon, or heck, you would get killed just because you're wanting to perform in a bar that didn't allow anyone of color.
Yeah.
So during that time, it was very crucial. It was just like, all right, if these racist people don't take you out, something else might take you out. It was definitely a great era. I don't think it's cool that Hollywood continues to make these films, especially about Black women, in the way that they do, because they were so much more than that.
Yes.
If they're a legend, they're a legend icons for a reason within itself, and it should stay that way. Not so okay, so drugs, people like drugs. Oh, sex sells. Like, no, we have to get out of that way of thinking like that strategically in order to get what we want. That's not it. To degrade someone's legacy, it's disgraceful and it's awful. Because if they were here, they'd be like, nope, it's not going to go down like that. You're not going to write my life story like that. Because you got to think about it. If that person wasn't here and 10, 15 years later, someone decides to write their life story, would they would have approved of it? They wouldn't have approved of it. So why would you do that to someone's legacy?
Exactly. And they kind of took the redeeming part, I guess, of this movie is the fact that it did showcase her being harassed so much by the government. And that, I guess, is the part, but it's kind of like it's oh, by the way, this also happened. Now, when they're promoting it, I mean, you'd think that that's what the whole movie was about, is about strange fruit and all of that. And it's definitely not. It's kind of very disjointed. I don't blame that on any of the actors or whatever, the script or the direction of how it was edited. It just did not flow well. That story was so prevalent to her that, I mean, that makes her a hero, but yet it's kind of, oh, by the way,
which was a big part of her life. It was a huge part. And then the way that she died, that they captured it,
Yeah.
wasn't the way that she actually died. I'm not going to talk anymore about it. But the way that she passed was so inhumane. I will say that. And it wasn't because of cirrhosis of the liver.
Yeah. So they didn't know that this was happening in the family at the time.
It was a lot of things happening in the family. And the only thing the elders knew was that they had to protect the next generation in order for the bloodline to continue. Because if they wouldn't have stepped in and did what they did, I probably wouldn't be here.
They talk about, and I don't know if this is true or not. I mean, so if I'm asking you and you clear the air on it. From what I've read, this kind of follows through the, what I've read and through the movie and through documentaries, that did she live in a brothel, or I've also seen some where it said she worked in a brothel. What is there any truth to that?
So it's kind of half and half. At one point she did stay in a brothel, and another point she stayed with her mother's sister. Her mother had a sister, a half sister. So she was kind of raised by the half sister. Her mom was not a mom at all. She went by Sadi. Sadi has a criminal record, and Sadi was a troublemaker, a very conniving, deceitful, wasn't someone you'd want to raise a child. I will say that, but her sister, her half sister, did step in. But Billie loved her mom, regardless of how she was treated.
She had a great relationship with someone in the band. I don't know if they were lovers or just extremely great friends. He's the one that dubbed her Lady.
Lester?
Yes. I think he has a different name in the movie. That's why I think they call him Prez in the movie or something. No, not Lester was her husband, right? Was Lester?
I know who you're talking about in regards to the gentleman that gave her the nickname.
Lester. You're right. Yeah, Lester. That's it. I saw in my notes. Yes, and he played in her band, correct? And all these the people that knew her, like her singing friends and everything, said that she called him her man and he called her lady, and that he was like this real gentleman and all of that. But they said she liked a bad boy. So they said, it didn't matter if she had the greatest man in the world right there, that if there was the worst guy in the world, in the room, she was attracted to him, and I think that's kind of the story of people today. They need, they're always attracted to the bad boy, but back then you almost had to she probably wanted someone to protect her. And so she was looking for somebody strong, and because she had been violated a lot, not just through the sexual abuse and the rape and everything that she went through, but to get paid and to get, to be protected and to have someone to be able to take a strong woman, period, was the family aware that she kind of had the affinity for the bad boys, or did they know any of her
it was a lot of stories written in there about all the guys she's dated, especially all the bad boys. But Lester was probably the only good one.
Yeah.
The only one that actually cared. The only one that he would give his life for her. He loved her. I think he was possibly in love with her.
Yeah.
She didn't go into detail, but he loved her. He loved her more than anyone else.
Yeah, and there's a video of from a television special when he had kind of had some health problems or whatever, and they because she was banned from a lot of television because of the headlines and so on, and so she asked for him to be in the band, and you can see they're looking at each other, and she's interacting with him through her eyes and things, and she's just like sold on him. You can tell this was someone very special to her. I don't know if it was a London special or if it was some kind
And
of jazz
that's,
special in America.
I would love to see that if
I'll
you could
send it to
send,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
because she spoke very highly of him. And I think I even have a letter where he wrote her. At one point when they were separated. So he did write. I still have the letters. I still have the letters that my great grandfather had sent to her before, he died. And she finally knew the truth of who her actual dad was.
Isn't that, I mean, that is something that definitely you need to make this movie, because that that's a lot better a better story. The fact that uh, that people did love her. And I think that the people in the movie, that they really don't portray people as her as having any kind of like friends other than a fictional lady. I don't know that they may have based her off a real person. I'm not sure.
The eye patch?
Yeah, yes. Was she a real
I don't
person?
know. Not that I'm aware of.
And then they changed Lester to Prez or something like that in there. And the guy that played Chris on Everybody Hates Chris, he played that character. And there's definitely not that story at all between the two of them that we have been discussing and that all of our friends have discussed. So
I will say this. It was rushed.
yeah, that's how it felt. The script felt very rushed. And they knew that you were in the probably in the wings getting it together, and we got to get this out before her, because now anybody can get a movie and get it on a streaming platform and it can become a success, which is great for independent filmmakers. I think it's wonderful, but it scares people like him, Lee Daniels, I think, because he's kind of trying to find his identity again. I mean, he lost everything with the movies, from how he's kind of treated people and stuff. So then he goes to television, and then all those shows got canceled.
I'm a strong believer in God.
Yeah.
Everything happens for a purpose and a reason.
Yeah.
If you do harm unto others and you
Yeah.
don't have pure intentions, whatever you put out into the world, you're going to get back 10 times more, whether it's good or bad.
Yeah.
And so when he made that decision, right then and there, 2 days later, he lost both of his shows, his contracts.
Yeah.
So everything happens for a reason and for a purpose. I'll let him have his shine for right now.
Yeah.
But that shine won't be forever. And what you do to people, come back 10 times more. And just like what happened with Monique,
Yeah.
she was blackballed, but
Yeah.
she came back 10 times stronger, and she's doing good. And
Yeah.
this is a funny story. So Monique is actually great friends with my family. She knew my grandmother. She would be in my grandmother's house and my great aunt Lil's house in Baltimore City. And she knows my uncles, my aunts, my grandmother had 18 kids. And so she grew up with them. They went to school together. They hung out. This was way before she got discovered in comedy.
Like with Audra, I bet that, he made all these great promises with her. Yeah, I can't afford to pay you much, but after you win these awards, the next day your salary is going to be, they tried all this with Monique, too. And she said, she was smart enough to know that it don't work that way, especially with women of color. That may work if Julia Roberts wins the Academy Award. It does not work that way if I win the Academy Award. And in her situation, she didn't really even complain about what she was paid. She was helping her friend, Mr. Daniels. Like you said, the film was felt rushed, and it had a distribution deal even that fell through, and Hulu kind of come in and saved it.
But it's a reason. It's a reason why it didn't go through. It's a reason for everything. And you see, I say this with a smile because that is karma. That is true karma. This is just the beginning. And, I'm sure Audra didn't know what she was walking into. And, I wish her nothing but
Yeah.
more success, and hopefully she gets paid what she's worth.
One thing also I want to ask you about with your aunt as well is there's this big trend with all celebrities, white, black, everybody, that after they're dead and 20, 40, however many years later, there's a book that comes out or a movie that comes out and they're gay or lesbian now, or bisexual or whatever. And I'm not putting anybody down who is by any way, shape, or form. But there's a huge trend that goes that way. Whether there's any proof of it or not. In some of the documentaries, there's people that say, yeah, she liked both or whatever. But as you know, as well, you cannot have a close relationship with any human being today that they do not link you, especially females, that they do not link as a same-sex relationship. Do you know if that was just kind of gossip or if it was reality?
Yes, so she definitely had her dealings with women. She did, but it was one in particular. I think things ended badly. Um, I forget her name, but I think the letter that was received for the film, for Lee Daniels' film, is what they use. But I also found a correspondence letter where Billie was not too happy with this young lady about a book about Billie because she didn't approve of it. It was a lot of things, and people were giving information up about Billie that she did not approve. And I say this again, she was not happy. Like, she sent her a nice letter cussing her out. And the young lady simply did not reply to her letter.
He said that also when they had wrote the book, just mentioning her name in the book got the legal departments, I guess, from the studios to threaten the book. So that,
Yeah. I mean, that was a huge headache for her.
yeah.
It was. Billie was a very honest person. Like, she told no lies. She had no reason to lie.
Yeah.
Like, even when she wasn't sober, she still wouldn't lie. A drunk person would never tell a lie. And if an honest person is not going to tell a lie, they're not going to lie regardless. But she did have quite the adventure. Like, she did live like quite a life. And I will say that. And just, gosh, like, just pages and pages and pages. And another thing that helped ground her in her moments of darkness. So she had a Bible that was about 200 years old.
Wow.
It's like really old now. Like, if you touch it, I'm afraid it might crumble. So I don't touch it. And it helped her because a lot of our ancestors wrote in it, like inspirational stuff, like quotes or certain markings. So my family did have like some dealings with the Underground Railroad as well.
Oh, wow.
especially in Maryland.
Yeah. So she came from strong shoulders. And that's the story I would have liked to have seen portrayed. I would like to have seen that, which I will get to in yours and your film. Tell us a little bit about what's going on in your life. I mean, you're in the entertainment industry, you're a filmmaker. What kind of projects do you have coming up? Or I know COVID probably put a pause on everything, but tell us a little bit about you, and so we can be looking for your star to rise, because I just feel like your heart is coming from the right place, that God's just going to bless you for reclaiming your family's legacy like this.
So I actually have 2 future films coming out. It's actually a trilogy. It's called Reborn Redemption, and it caters around the topic of domestic violence, because there needs to be more awareness in in our surrounding communities and programs. But I did it with a twist. So you got to stay tuned for that. So I start production this summer, and it will be my first time directing it, and it's something I wrote during COVID. And I'm also coming out with a TV series titled Deception of the Streets. There's a short film that I'm releasing this summer. It's like a snippet introduction to the official TV series, inspired by true stories and true events of a serial killer.
Do you have people in mind that you would love to, like, if you're dream casting? No, they're not affiliated. I'm not trying to pin you down to anything like that. But if you could cast somebody to play your aunt, who would you like to see do it?
I would definitely cast Tessa Thompson. She reminds me so much of her facial features, like her jawline, her nose structure, like everything. And she has a beautiful voice, and her acting capabilities are impeccable. Like she could play any character, and she's done time period pieces as well. Another one I was looking at too is Journey Smallett, Jessie Smollett's sister.
Okay.
She's very, very talented and she doesn't get as much credit as she should.
Yeah.
She's really a phenomenal actress. Like I've seen her in the TV series The Underground. That was remarkable show. Like her acting, like she's been acting since she was a kid. So it's between those two that I would get to play my great aunt, because I know that they would deliver it in the way that it should and capture the true essence of her.
Thank you so much for doing my show, and we're definitely going to be looking out for your projects. Do you have a website or something that you would like people to join, or you want them to follow you on Instagram, or how what's the best way to keep up with you?
Yes. So my websites and Instagram. So my website is Andrea Ward AndreaWardOfficial.com and RedemptionPictures.com as well. And then my Instagram, of course, is my name, Andrea Ward. And then I have my short film page, Deception Streets. So that's where all the updates you can find.
I appreciate you for doing this, and I appreciate you even more for keeping your aunt's legacy in a positive light and reclaiming that legacy.
And thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Subscribe to our mailing list and you could win a CD or DVD project by today's featured artist. To enter, please go to www.mrnashvilletalks.com and enter your email address. While there, take a look around, browse through our music store. Our show is totally funded by viewer support. Every t-shirt or music purchase from our store helps bring us new shows for you.